The breath of all things may be the actual power system underneath Haki and a bunch of other abilities because Haki gets boiled down to willpower all the time. But Luffy before could completely run out of it in Gear 4th. Enma can yank it straight out of Zoro's body, and advanced Haki depends on learning how to control where that energy flows. So there's clearly more happening than somebody just being really determined. Willpower may control how spiritual energy comes out, but that still leaves one pretty massive question. Where does that spiritual energy come from? And the answer may go all the way back to Zoro versus Mr. One and Alabasta when he was learning how to cut steel. But that scene is only the beginning, because once you compare it to Rokushiki, Life Return, the Minks, the Lunarians, and one ability that reaches beyond the user's own body, the breath of all things starts looking less like a YouTube tutorial on cutting steel and more like the basic rule behind all powers across One Piece. Haki gets misunderstood all the time as basically One Piece's version of chakra or Ryatsu. You know, generic anime spirit energy sitting inside the body until someone decides to use it. And okay, yeah, Haki does involve spiritual energy. That part isn't wrong. People harness their own spiritual energy, and the willpower affects how it manifests. But those are two different parts of the process. Spiritual energy is what they're using. Willpower seems to decide what that energy does. That distinction matters, because saying Haki comes from willpower can make it sound like determination somehow creates the energy from nothing. But the energy has to be there before somebody can shape it. So the real question isn't whether Haki uses spiritual energy. It obviously does. The question is what role willpower actually plays once that energy is already inside the body. And yeah, the three types of Haki give us a decent idea of what willpower is actually doing here. That same spiritual energy can come out as awareness through observation, defense or raw force through armament, or that overwhelming pressure you get from conquerors. Depending on the person and what they're trying to do with it, the energy comes out differently. Conquerors makes this even more interesting because you can't just train it until you unlock it. You have to be born with the potential for it. You can prove it, sure, but you can't create that potential from nothing. So even if spiritual energy exists inside every living thing, not everybody can express it in the same way, which makes willpower look less like the field and more like the thing deciding what the field becomes. And Enma gives us a pretty clean look at the difference. The sword isn't taking away Zoro's will. He still knows what he wants to do. He still wants to fight. Enma's just yanking way more Haki out of his body that he's ready to control at once. Advanced armament shows the opposite side of that. Instead of letting Haki spill out however it wants, the user learns to guide it outside the body and release the right amount on purpose. Then you had Luffy in Gear 4 who kept pushing his Haki until basically he tapped out of it. So Haki has a flow to it. You can control how much comes out, where it goes, and how long you can keep using it until your body hits a limit. Willpower controls the release. It still doesn't explain the secret sauce, but like the video, subscribe, click the bell, and hit the hype button so I know you're actually ready to learn about the secret sauce.
It's the lamb sauce!
That takes us back to Zoro versus Mr. One. Way before Oda properly explained Haki, Zoro sensed something inside rocks, trees, and steel. He called it their breath. And since none of those things seem to be using Haki, that scene may be pointing to something deeper than Haki itself, something that was already there before Zoro ever learned how to sense it. So other than Zoro versus Mr. One being one of the coolest things to pop off in the Alabasta arc, shit was kind of weird, especially when you're still getting used to the weirdness of One Piece for the first time. Exhibit A, Zoro finally cuts steel. And how does he pull that off? Right before the attack, he says he can sense a breath inside the steel itself. And it wasn't only steel either. He could sense the rocks and everything moving around him without even looking straight at it. Which, again, is kind of weird because last time I checked, rocks and steel don't have lungs or any other working organs. Yeah, One Piece takes place in a world with talking ships and people who can turn into jackets. So weird shit still happens, but these aren't special objects or devil fruit users. They're just ordinary rocks and steel. They don't seem to have a conscious will, but Zoro still picked up on something inside them. So before this can explain anything about Haki, we gotta figure out what Zoro was actually sensing. The scene makes it pretty clear that Zoro didn't beat Mr. One by pulling some last second strength boost out of his ass. The dude was half dead. His body is completely fucked at this point. What changes isn't his strength, it's the way he's rating everything around him. The whole area goes quiet. He knows where the rocks are gonna fall and he can finally pick up on whatever's coming from the steel in front of him. That's when Koshiro's old lesson finally clicks. A swordsman can cut steel when they want to, but they should be able to swing at something and leave it completely untouched. So Zoro isn't just overpowering Mr. One, he's sensing the steel closely enough to know how to cut it. And that matters because Zoro didn't put that breath inside the steel. Whatever he picked up on was already there. He just finally got locked in enough to notice it. So when Zoro calls this a breath, he obviously isn't talking about regular breathing, but the word breath can mean more than air going in and out of somebody's lungs. Ideas like chi and ki can connect breath with life, energy, spirit, or somebody's presence, and that gives us a useful way to read the scene. Zoro may not be hearing the steel breathe like a person, he may be sensing its inner state, whatever makes that piece of steel what it is. And that comparison helps explain how breath could describe something deeper than normal breathing and something that may not be limited to living bodies. And this is where it all starts connecting back to Haki. Haki uses spiritual energy inside a living being, but whatever Zoro called breath seems to exist beyond living bodies because he could actually sense it inside objects, non-living things. So maybe breath is the deeper layer. Inside a living creature, that same force could exist as spiritual energy. Willpower shapes how it comes out, and Haki is one way the person learns to use it. So basically, breath is the foundation, spiritual energy is how that foundation exists inside living beings, willpower shapes it, Haki releases it. Oda hasn't said those things are all part of one system, we're just connecting the dots ourselves. But if breath exists inside the body before somebody ever uses Haki, then Haki probably isn't the only way people can learn how to control it. And this idea may go way beyond fighting styles because it could also explain what the One Piece actually is, which I happen to have a theory about. You can check it out in the card above. But first, we need to look at what happens when somebody learns to control that force through the body without using Haki. So if breath is also running through the body, then Haki probably isn't the only way somebody can learn how to control it. And that's where Rokushiki and Life Return comes in, because neither system needs a devil fruit or some magical power dropped into your lap. It's basically people gaining a stupid level of control over their own bodies, which yeah, could just mean One Piece martial arts are just built different. That's completely possible, but if breath really is the force underneath all of this, then these techniques may be showing us another way to get at it without using Haki. So the question is, are the 6 powers just downright disrespectful ass whippings? Or are they another way of controlling whatever is already moving inside the body? And once you line all 6 techniques up, Rokushiki starts looking less like a bunch of random anime bullshit and more like a full system for pushing the human body as far as it could possibly go. Zoro pushes speed, and Geppo takes jumping strength so far that people can midair jump like they're Mario. Shigan concentrates force through the fingers until somebody's hand basically becomes a gun. Rankyaku turns the force of a kick into a flying blade. Then Kamiye and Tekai take the body in opposite directions. One makes it ridiculously loose and flexible, and the other makes it hard enough to tank attacks head on. So yeah, each technique grabs something the body can already do and takes it to a completely stupid level. Life Return gets us way closer to what we're actually looking for because this shit goes beyond running faster or hitting harder. It lets people consciously control parts of their bodies that are normally just doing their own thing in the background. Kumandori is the most obvious example. He can move his hair around like extra limbs, burn through stored calories almost instantly, and change his body shape in seconds. Probably the best alternative to Ozempic. And Lucci can apply the same kind of control to his zone form. He takes that huge bulky leopard body and compresses it into a smaller version with more speed and way better control. Different people can use Life Return to control completely different parts of their bodies, and that's what matters here. One Piece is showing us that even the stuff your body normally handles automatically can be dragged under conscious control. So if breath is tied to all that inner activity inside a living body, Life Return may be the closest example we've seen of someone reaching in and controlling that process directly. But Rokushiki and Life Return create a problem for the idea that Haki is the only way to control what's happening inside the body. Haki uses willpower to shape spiritual energy. Rokushiki uses extreme physical training to push the body past its normal limits, and Life Return reaches into functions that usually happen without the person even thinking about them. They're not secretly the same technique. Rokushiki isn't hidden Haki and Life Return isn't some lost fourth category, but they may be reaching the same deeper layer from different directions. Haki shapes it through will, Rokushiki trains the body to release it through movement, Life Return brings the body's internal processes under conscious control. And if people can reach that deeper force through training, Then the next question is, what happens when a body is already built to express it naturally? Because some races in One Piece don't have to learn how to produce electricity, fire, and other weird shit. Their bodies already know how to. Electro is probably one of the cleanest examples of a race being born with its own natural power output. Every Mink can use it. Kids can do it, old people can do it, and Sulong cranks that electrical output even higher. They produce bioelectricity through their bodies and then run it through their attacks and weapons. And Carrot gives us a useful comparison with Randolph from the Big Mom Pirates. He looks like a humanoid rabbit, talks like a person, and can fight because he's a homie brought to life with a part of somebody's soul. But he can't use Electro, because underneath all that, he isn't actually a Mink. So Electro doesn't come from being intelligent or having a personality or just looking like a furry. It comes from the way a Mink's body is built. And if breath is the inner force running through a living body, then Mink biology may naturally turn that breath into electricity, especially with their fur. Lunarians look like the fire version of what we see with the Minks, but their abilities gets a lot more complex. They can produce fire from their bodies, run it through their limbs and weapons, launch it as an attack, and shape it into different forms. At its strongest, King's fire gets so intense that it starts behaving more like magma than normal flame. But the fire isn't only an attack, it also seems to be tied to how the rest of the body works. When King's flame is burning, his durability becomes completely ridiculous. When it goes out, he gets faster. So Lunarians aren't just producing fire, their bodies seem to shift power between flame, defense, and speed. We still don't know exactly what fuels that process or whether it drains them over time, but if breath is running through the body, the Lunarian biology may be turning that inner force into fire while also deciding how the rest of the body uses its strength. Minks turn it into electricity, Lunarians may turn it into fire. But both powers still begin inside the user. Fishman Karate, Fishman Jiu-Jitsu, and Merman Combat all seem to work off the same basic idea. Fishmen and merfolk can manipulate water that's already around them. They don't have to create it first. They can move water through the environment, weaponize it, and even affect the water inside somebody else's body. And that's what makes this different from Electro or Lunarian fire. Those powers start inside the user. Fishmen and merfolk can reach outside themselves and take control of something that was already there. But the rule still looks familiar. The thing they're controlling already exists. They learn how to interact with it, redirect it, and turn it into an attack. So whatever breath is in One Piece, it may not stop at the edge of somebody's body. It may also be part of how people connect with the world around them. And this is where the breath of all things starts opening up a much uglier possibility. Because if that force already exists inside people and the world around them, then somebody wouldn't have to create a new source of power from scratch. They just have to figure out how to grab what's already there, twist it, and force it to do something else. And Emu may already be doing that with their devil fruit. That's what I talk about in the next video.